What Scott was just talking about is perfect for some of the things I've got on my PowerPoint, which I find kind of amusing, but that's the way it goes. I'm with the Park R3 School District, which is in Estes Park, Colorado, which is northwest of Boulder and northwest of Denver. Let's see if I can figure out how to, tell me again how I make this go forward. Got it. Okay, so I'm going to highlight 3 studies that we're doing. And actually the first study is the one that I'm doing in partnership with Kevin Dixon from the West Haven High School, and it's called Science Education Field Studies and Ecological Effects of Pine Beetle Infestation. It's actually done in the national park. And then another one that I'm going to talk about a little bit is Flow Zone, and it's the study of movement of ozone in the Front Range. We're looking at EPA data from Denver up to Estes Park and then on up to the Continental Divide, and from Fort Collins, Loveland, Estes Park up to the Continental Divide. And then the No Zone project that we're working on is actually looking at our sister parks. So I'll kind of highlight the first one, Science Education Field Studies and the Ecological Effects of Pine Beetle Infestation, is actually a permit that we have in the national park. And I think we're the first secondary school to get a permit. But for those of you that don't know, we have a terrible pine beetle infestation in the Colorado, actually the entire Rocky Mountains moving north. And so we wanted to look at how this was affecting, this pine beetle infestation, how it was affecting the ecological system of the park. So what we were looking at was we did GPS protocols. We were looking at nitrates in soil. We're looking at land cover, tree circumference, and water quality. And of course, the first time that we went out to collect data, it took us so long to get our park permit that there was a ton of snow on the ground. But our question is, are nitrates from pollution in the Front Range increasing soil and water as pine forests are being decimated by the pine beetle? And what we're seeing is a lot of orange trees and trees falling down, so you don't have those carbon sinks, you don't have the pollution, the possibility of the trees being used to somewhat cleanse the air. It's getting kind of worse and worse. So I took about 55 students out to the park. My environmental science students arrived early because their assignment was to actually, we had our location, but we needed to grid the location for the younger students that were coming. My environmental science students, I had about 25 kids, and they all had assignments. And we started at a stand of pine beetle trees, and then which were fairly high up on the mountain. We had snowshoes because there was a lot of snow up at the top. And then they worked a grid down and then into some open space that eventually went into a riparian area and into a small creek. So each group had to do a different thing. Some of them were working with flags, some of them were actually doing the GPS, some of them were doing photo capture. You know, I had certain kids in charge of the tape measure, whatever. It turned out to be a really steep hillside, so we had a lot of unintentional sledding going on. Then my honors bio class, I actually had looking at nitrates in soil, which of course was a little difficult because we had a little over a foot of snow where we were, but they went to the top of the grid and they used a protocol where they took a little bit of soil, mixed it with distilled water, put chemicals in it, and then we're testing the nitrates that way. We also did soil temperature and phosphorus and potassium, just basically because the protocol, the equipment that we were using could measure that, so we went ahead and did it. they also took that area that was the 90 meter by 90 meters and put it into smaller grids and then used a diagonal. And the idea was at the midpoint of the two diagonals was where they tested. But we had fallen trees. It was a little bit windy. We had to be careful of the other trees coming down. So, but it wasn't a grid, so that was good. Yeah, the issues were the slope of the hillsides. Soil was hard to find. It was a really large area to get all of that testing done in, and it was cold. Then my 8th graders were actually doing land cover classification. I had a parent helping with that. And then they were supposed to be doing a plant count and plant species diversity, but since they could not do that, what we did instead was I had them go ahead and measure the trees in the grid area, and then do a drawing of what trees were up, what trees were down, and what was the circumference of all of the different trees. And then we'll go back this spring and we will look at the plant diversity and do a little bit of a plant count type of thing. Then I had my 7th graders, and they were actually doing the water quality monitoring. We did DO, nitrates, temperature, did the hydrological study site, and we did pH. And we actually had to break through the ice to get the water. And so the kids had a blast. The kids were fun. We also had parents that brought hot chocolate. I guess I forgot to put this in here. We had the Rocky Mountain Cat Conservancy with us, and we put up some cameras to do some mammal tracking in that same study location. The problems that arose were, of course, by the time we got the permit, it would have been great to do it in the fall when the aspens were changing, and it would have been a little easier to get around, but that didn't happen. So we had quite a bit of snow on the ground. I had to get snowshoes for everybody. It was cold, so we had parents, and we had to kind of pack in hot chocolate. Transportation, as everybody knows, is a little bit of an issue in that it's a cost problem. Then because it was the first time that the kids had done it, it was the first time that the parents who were helping me had done it, we did it more as a dry run than actually as a data gathering. We actually have a 5-year permit, so our first real data collection will be this spring, because we encountered too many problems last fall that we had to counteract, and it was a good start, but we really need to go back and do it a little differently the second go round. Yeah, the national park runs for 5 years testing, and then interestingly enough, I think this is going to be kind of cool. Just a little plug for our national park. The National Geographic is doing a bio blitz in Rocky Mountain National Park, August 24th and 25th. And because my kids have done quite a bit with the data collection, we're going to be helping with that quite a bit. The next study that we're doing is actually my environmental research methods class that's doing it. And we work with the Go3 project out of Boulder, and so we've been looking. There's a lot of ozone damage that is happening to the plants on the tundra, so we decided to look at that. So we wanted to see if ozone was actually flowing from areas of high pollution, and we used Denver and Fort Collins, and then we've hit the Estes Park area, then we've hit the Longs Peak Ranger Station, and then it goes on up to the Continental Divide, which is at the head of the Ute Trail. And so the data that they are collecting is actually data that's on the internet through let's see, Fort Collins, Loveland, Denver are all EPA data. We have an ozone monitor at our school, that's Go3, and then the national park has their own data, which is the Longs Peak Ranger Station, and then at this trailhead. So we had a little bit of an issue in that we decided to do it over the summer, and Estes Park High School didn't start collecting data until 2010, and the Ute Trail location was from 2008 and 2009. So we basically broke it into two different types of studies, where one was looking at the lower elevations going through Estes Park up to the Longs Peak Ranger Station, and then the other study is going from the lower elevations of Denver and Fort Collins, and then hitting Estes Park, and then it goes to Longs Peak, but does not go up to the Ute Trail because we've only got data for a certain time. But it's really working out pretty well. Yeah, our sources of data were those three EPA Go3 project and the Rocky Mountain National Park. We are just finishing up our data, where obviously the purpose is to see what ozone damage, because of this ozone damage, to see if the ozone is actually flowing up from Denver and Fort Collins and settles in Estes Park, or does it go on up to the Continental Divide? So that's what we're investigating at this point in time. We're presenting this data to the Rocky Mountain National Park Conference in late March, and then the EPA National Conference in May is in Denver, and they've asked us to come and do a presentation on the same data. And then the third project that we're doing is actually, we have three sister parks, one in Zakopane, Poland, one in Monteverde, and then Estes Park. And the kids have been looking at the ozone highs and lows of all three areas, because all three of those sister cities are upslope of large industrial areas. So we're looking for comparisons, and in this particular study, I have been to both Zakopane and Monteverde, and we expected Zakopane to have the highest ozone, which it didn't. And we came to find out that the reason for this is in Poland, they burned so much coal, there was a lot of carbon particles in the air. And so as I drove from Krakow up to Zakopane, it was like driving through a haze the whole way. So I couldn't believe that there was no ozone, but what actually was happening was the carbon particles in the air were keeping the ozone from obtaining its maximum peak because of the chemical combinations in the air. But as the carbon particles would separate from the ozone and blow further away, you would get the high ozone in a location where you actually wouldn't see the carbon particles. They were also looking at the fact, the Monteverde is where there is a cloud forest. So you were looking at two areas. Zakopane was evergreens or conifers. Estes Park is primarily conifers, although we do have the aspen, which Zakopane does not have. And then you have the cloud forest in Monteverde. So the kids have kind of been looking at how ozone is cleaned through the different broadleaf or needles of the conifers. What this group is also presenting to the Park Service the end of March and to the EPA in May. And that's it, folks. Questions? I guess that means no.
Thank you, Melinda. Any questions come up in the chat window?
Okay.
Oh, Don's down here.
Oh, I see. I need to scroll down. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, all of these studies will be ongoing. So we will continue them for at least the next 5 years. Have we had challenges? Oh my gosh, they've been huge. The challenges are huge. With the project that we did in the park, having that many kids, having 55 kids, and trying to coordinate the data collection, I have to say the younger kids did a great job. The older kids I had a little bit more issue with, but the younger kids were better monitored. I had more parents with them because I thought the older kids would handle it, but it didn't really work out that way. Um, so, but I think the second go around on collecting data in the park is going to go a lot smoother because we all know what we're doing, we know where we're going, we know where the grid should be, and all of that. As far as the ozone studies, the only issues that we've had are that we, like with the Go3 data, it is taken every 15 minutes, and the EPA data is already averaged to an hourly average. So we had to figure out whether it was at the beginning of the hour, the end of the hour, and then we had to go back through and average all of the Go3 data so that everything, we were comparing apples to apples. In doing so, there was a tremendous, with the Go3 project, you have data every 15 minutes for, 7 days a week for the 3 months that we were doing it. So that was a tremendous amount of data. However, my little cherubs had come up with a new program called Excel. It's not Excel. They were using Python, which could handle much larger groups of data. So it was really kind of fun because one student knew how to use it, and then he taught everybody else, so that we basically, the learning process was in how to use the program, but actually plugging the data in was coming much easier than it would have ever happened in Excel. So, and with that, the next set of problem will be is that my students change every year. So that means that every year I have to go back and reteach everything we're doing. So that makes it a little difficult at times. I would like to say that we have a huge group of kids up here living next to the national park that want to go into environmental sciences, but truthfully we don't. And so it's my probably, as a teacher in Estes Park, the most difficult part for me is maintaining a core group to work with the other kids.